All right, we're at 10 o'clock and we're going to get started. Wanted to say thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Rena Saltzman and I'm just going to go through a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. This webinar is going to be recorded, and following the webinar, we will be sending a follow-up with the recording as well as today's presentation. So look out for that email. We also encourage you to ask questions. So if there are questions that come up throughout this presentation, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. At the end of the webinar, we are going to add in some time to answer some of these questions. If we do not get to your question in today's presentation, we will be following up with you after the presentation to ensure that your questions are answered. This is the third and final segment in our three-part series of Thriving with AI. And it's going to be about finding the right AI tools for your organization. So we're going to get started. Jim?
Hey, thank you, Rena. Thank you, and welcome to Thriving with AI, Finding the Right Tools. As Rena stated, I'm Jim Karp, and Ben Evey's going to join me here pretty quick. And we're going to be going through a whole bunch of topics for you today. As Rena indicated, we're very flexible with this conversation, so please do come up with the questions. We'll do our best to answer them. We'll probably answer a lot of your questions right from the get-go as we go through everything. But in either case, we're going to do a quick review of where we've been. We're going to look at data structures as to how you put the data together and different components that you can put it into. Then we're going to look at the AI maturity model and then look at the tools based upon where you are potentially on your journey through the artificial intelligence. Then we're going to wrap up with looking at some of the large language models. Now, it's real important here from our perspective as you look and you say, which is the best AI for you? What we want to do is just do a quick review here of where we've been, just make sure that everybody's on the same frame of reference. If you haven't seen the previous webinars, we strongly encourage you to go back and take a look at them. But in the first webinar, what we did is we talked about basically the landscape of artificial intelligence. We defined all the different terms. And then at that point, we went through some of the large language models, some of the prompting so you could get started and play with that a little bit. The second webinar changed the focus a little bit, and the focus more was on how do you build that roadmap and determine where do you want to go? And then while you're on that journey, to be able to look at it from a risk management perspective. Very important before you jump into AI and get a lot of this information out there. You really have to have a robust cybersecurity program, data governance, data management, making sure that you have having the policy put in place for the AI from that vantage point. And then from there, now what we're going to do is say, okay, determining where you want to be on that spectrum, what could some of the potential tools be? Now, also, it's real important to say this, we're focusing in on organizations that are basically getting started. So if you're really advanced from an artificial intelligence perspective, this might be a refresher, or you might learn a couple new things. But if you're relatively new to it and you're saying, where do I get started? What are the typical tools that I could be leveraging? You're at the right spot here today. So if we go through the just some general terms here again, general AI is basically versatile artificial intelligence. There's people that say that we're there. There are people that say that we're not quite there with Gen AI yet. But in either case, that's where you develop an algorithm, and that algorithm can function pretty much without a lot of input. As opposed to narrow AI, which is designed for a specific task. That's something like the Netflix when they recommend saying, you like this picture or this movie, you might enjoy this one. That's narrow AI, it's a specific one. And then all the way to the far right is what we call generative AI, and that's kind of like the magic wand or the paintbrush. You can start creating and doing different things. If we look at this screen right here, the two on the left, general AI and narrow AI, that's a different skill set if you want to create custom ones as opposed to the generative AI. And so the way we look at this world today is we're saying, we think you can do both concurrently. If you're interested in developing your own language models and being able to have your own custom, those are pretty much the two on the left. And we'll show you the tools that you can get there with that. If you're interested in jumping into the generative AI, that's the tail end today after we've had a chance to go through that. So let's go through the maturity model here real quick. We've done this each of the presentations, but the important thing is you need to start with the data. That's right down there at the base. Every time we start talking to a lot of people, everybody jumps to the top. They want to talk about artificial intelligence, how they can get there. Well, in our opinion, there's steps that you need to take to be able to get there if you want to develop custom AI and have that competitive advantage for your organization. So there's that old adage, garbage in, garbage out. If you haven't heard it before, it's basically if you have bad data, you're going to get bad results. So Ben's going to spend some time here pretty quick talking about the different data structures and how things can be put together. If you look at the first step, it's the descriptive as well as the diagnostic data analytics. And pretty much that is what happened and why did it happen. And typically that's going to use what we call small data. That's data that's on your premises. It's data that you can control. You can glean through it, figure out what things are going on and be able to get there. Based on that, though, you can move up the steps. And this is where the skill sets change. And this is where it becomes more difficult. If you get into predictive analytics, you're saying, where's the ball going to bounce? And typically that's going to be using large data sets or big data and the large language models. And then if you want to get into the prescriptive is basically saying where do we think it's going to be from that vantage point, or what do you do about it? And there you're going to be using machine learning and deep learning along those lines. So each of these different areas have different tools. We'll be going through those different tools as we go through that. And then ultimately, depending upon your goals, like we talked about in the second webinar, you can determine your roadmap and look at it from an ROI perspective and say, does this make sense for us to continue? So enough with this backdrop and everything. Let's get on to the data structures. And Ben, why don't you take it away?
Sure, love to. So as we're going through this is a webinar about AI. So why are we talking about data structures? Well, data structure, this is foundational information, right? So artificial intelligence, it's only as good as the underlying model, which is only as good as the data that it's pulling from and how that data is organized. So that's why we're going to talk about data a little bit here. And there are different ways to organize data. We're going to start with structured data and what that means. So structured data, we're talking about data that is highly organized, easily searchable, typically in a database format. And you can think of it like a spreadsheet where you have every cell of data. It's organized in rows and columns, and those columns are labeled. It's all good. Very rigid, very, very much, well, structured. We're going to use the word. So for example, employee records in a database, what we have on the screen. So you're looking at, you have columns for employee ID, name, position, salary, very structured. Sales transactions, what was the date of the transaction? What was the product ID of what was sold? How many were sold? How much? Again, very structured in a tabular format. And if we could move to the next slide. Go. And now we're talking about semi-structured data. So what does that look like? So semi-structured data, it's a mix, right? So you've got some things that are structured, some things that are not. So organized elements and unorganized data. Labels and tags can be used to provide some structure. It doesn't necessarily always fit into a perfect database, but you are going to have some things that are organized like online reviews as you're going through and you're looking at your Amazon star ratings. Those are very structured. But what people put into the comments, they can put anything in there. Some review sites will let you update images, will let you put in their text, will let you do all kinds of things, URLs, all of that. So social media posts, similar. If you're out on Reddit, if you're out on Facebook, you can do something similar with putting anything you want out there. But the date of the comment is still going to be structured. The information is like that. The number of likes, the number of shares, it's all structured. So it's a mix. And then we move into, next slide, unstructured data. So now we're talking about data that is not defined, right? All kinds of data are thrown together. This can be difficult for normal humans and conventional tools to process, which is where AI comes in. And you're looking at things like you may have a pile of Word documents, PDF spreadsheets all together. You may have videos and images, and it could be all kinds of videos and all kinds of formats all together. And you're just waiting for something to put some organization around it. Next slide. All right. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how data is stored. We've talked about the different kinds of structured, semi-structured, unstructured. Traditionally, data has been stored in a data warehouse. So, what is it? So the name paints the picture, right? It's a centralized repository of data from one or more sources, and people typically use it for reporting and analysis. So you can use it for decision making, you can use it for getting a historical view of your data, business intelligence and AI and data mining. All these are things that can come out of your data warehouse, how your data is stored. This is, again, a traditional model. So now in a traditional model, we're talking about something that is typically database backed. So you have a relational database kind of in charge of how the organization is all there in your warehouse. And it's organized, right? Now, as we move into the modern age, things change a little bit. And Jim's going to talk about that. Next slide.
There we,
Oh, I'm wrong. I'm going to talk about that. So as we go through, we've got the data lake model. So as you're looking at these different things, the traditional data warehouse model was database backed. We talked about unstructured data before. That is the data lake model. So now you have this vast reservoir, everything you need to know, as it says on the screen, everything you have all together in one place. Jim, you're going to have to go to the next slide there, please. For data lake. There we go. As it says on the screen now. Everything you know, everything you have all together in one place. So a data lake, it's just a pool, right? We're going to keep using water references. It's a big pool of information that includes everything your business has. Sales numbers can be in there. Customer feedback can be in there. Web traffic, inventory levels, Word documents and spreadsheets, financial statements, all of it can be stuck into this data lake in one spot. It can take any kind of, data, any kind of format, any kind of schema to that data. Yeah, this is when people talk about big data, when they talk about cloud technologies around big data, this is what they're talking about, the data lake. It's a schema on read approach, meaning that instead of like a traditional data warehouse where you have to go through and define all your columns and what they're going to be, this is you're pulling data out of the lake and you're organizing it as you pull it. It's defined at the time of querying. Nice things about data lake, right? It's low cost. You can put a whole ton of stuff in there. It's high volume. And there's all kinds of stuff you can have in it. So as you're looking at this data lake, you're thinking, well, okay, it's all out in one place. Doesn't that present some challenges? Well, in fact, it does, right? You have challenges in data governance, quality, security that you're going to have to overcome when you have all of your data in a large pile. Someone's going to have to be taking the reins on that and managing it. How does that work? Well, we'll get into that in a bit. Go ahead, Jim.
okay, thank you. All right, so where's technology headed? On a historical basis, most organizations have chosen to have everything on premise, and that was everything that they could control and take care of everything. 10 years ago, things started to change. The cloud came out. There were some early adopters. Now, a lot of organizations are where I think today we're at the hybrid cloud-based, and that's where you're pretty much, you got some stuff on-prem, you got some stuff in the cloud. We believe that everything's kind of headed towards the centralized cloud. And from that vantage point is then do away with the on-prem. You've got everything out in the cloud. Ben and I've kind of chatted about this before. Life seems to go in circles at times, and so there might be a trend in the future to have it circling, going back to on-prem. I remember 15 years ago when the cloud was first starting to come out, a lot of people said, geez, we'll never go to the cloud. Here we are today, a totally different aspect of it. So if you look at it from the data lake perspective and you're looking at it in the cloud, there's a lot of advantages to it. And we won't spend a ton of time on this, but you get centralized storage. You get everything in one spot. We talked about the data management aspect and how important it is to have your structured data, semi-structured and unstructured data. You can put it all in one spot. It gives you flexibility from an associate perspective of being able to manage and take care of all the data, as well as being able to move the data around. Scalability. If you have it in the cloud and you want to start doing the machine learning, the deep learning, and all of those different aspects of it, you can scale up really quick. You've got enough horsepower to be able to get everything taken care of. If you're on-prem, you don't have that capability. You can then start doing the advanced analytics. And then also really important, and we keep emphasizing this from a security perspective, you've got to have your security nailed down before you get started with all this stuff, because there can be a lot of problems associated with it. So with that, with the data lakes and looking at all that, it's pretty close to what we talked about before with the roadmap. You really need to do an assessment first, figure out what you've got today, figure out how you can integrate that data. That's both the cloud as well as the on-prem, put it together. Make sure you've got a solid governance plan, a security plan, as well as the data management plan from that vantage point. So Ben, thanks for covering all that. It's real important though, because of the lake concept. I mean, what I say to people a lot of times, if you're familiar with OneDrive or from Microsoft, well, OneLake is the same thing, except for now it's for the entity, for the entire organization. So it's OneDrive for the entire organization. from that vantage point. So let's talk a little bit about the tools. We showed you the AI model here when we first started today. So Ben spent some time on the data, and we know that that's where we need to start from a roadmap perspective and building everything out. So now let's go to the descriptive and diagnostic. We'll look at some of the tools there. Again, we won't be going online with the tools, but we'll be sharing with you some of the tools that a lot of our clients and what we've experienced on a historical basis. Then we'll look at it from a predictive as well as prescriptive. But first, what we'll do is we'll look at it. If you haven't heard this term before, it's ETL, and it's extract, transform, and load. And so this is basically, you want to be able to get your data. You have to look at the data and make sure it's uniform, because you have the structured, the semi-structured data from that vantage point. So you got to have apples to apples. You can't be throwing apples and oranges together initially, and then you have to load it to be able to, in essence, render the data from that perspective. So if you look across the bottom here, some of the tools, these are some of the tools that our clients have used on a historical basis. Microsoft Fabric, we'll be spending a little bit more time with that. You got the Microsoft SQL. A lot of people are very experienced along those lines. Oracle's got the integrator. Informatica does it, as well as Talent. So from an ETL perspective, again, you have to be able to pull the data from all the different sources. Now, if you're at a centralized cloud, then that becomes a little bit easier. Then you need to make sure you have apples to apples comparisons so you can work with the data, and then you can load it and get it into a spot to be able to work with that. Here's some of the big players from that vantage point. Now, descriptive and diagnostic analytics. Again, that's answering the what happened and why did it happen. And the players are on to the right here. You have Google Data Studio. We know some people that have been leveraging that. Tableau, Microsoft Fabric, again, you see a pattern here. Qlik, as well as the Oracle Analytics. So in this case, some of them, as we talked just previously about the ETL aspects of it, a lot of these tools will have a lot of those ETL components in it, okay, from that vantage point. So again, you've got those. Now, if you want to go in, you want to start doing the machine learning, the deep learning, and you want to get into the predictive as well as prescriptive, then you have Fabric again. The Google's got one, R, which is the coding, as well as Python. But the thing is here, see, now when you get to this level of the maturity model, the game changes. It is very scientific. There's a lot of information that you have to go through, a lot of different skill sets, and a lot of organizations, depending upon where you are in the marketplace, may or may not have the resources to be able to get there. So again, the different tools that you've got right down there, you can look these up. If you go out to Google, you can Google them real quick. Or if you have access to Copilot, we'll be showing you that in just a bit. You can bring those folks up as well. So what we see now, this is kind of an eye chart, and it's not intended for you to be able to read all the different aspects of it. It's more here to kind of give you the big picture. There's a wall of complexity that's out there. So when we first started looking at artificial intelligence about, that's close to 18, 19 months ago, we looked at it and we said, to be able to get through all of the different aspects, to be able to render it and put it into some type of executive format that executives can see it, there was a lot of complexity to the point where it'd be like you need chicken wire, Band-Aids, and bubble gum to be able to pull it all together. So a lot of tools came out and they were single purpose tools. So if you looked at the far left, it's kind of yellow. That's infrastructure. The red was analytics. Then you got machine learning, which is the purple. You got applications. And then along the bottom was a lot of the open source. And these are some of the different players that were out there. And the challenge that we found as we looked at it is every piece of software was expensive and they weren't necessarily aligned with the next piece. So as you went through that extract, transform, and load, you'd have to have one way to get it from this software to the next. And so it became somewhat of a challenge. So as we looked at it, what we did is Microsoft came out a year ago now with the Microsoft Fabric. It's in preview. It's still in preview. They're still developing it. But the interesting aspect of it is Ben was talking about the lake aspect of it, the data lake. And we've talked a little bit about the cloud aspect of it. So if you look at the very bottom, the SaaS foundation, software as a service, you've got the one lake concept. And then up top of it, we've got all of the ETL capabilities. They've got the data factory. We'll go through each of these right here. Now, this isn't a Microsoft, let's go buy Microsoft type of presentation. But what we're saying is what Microsoft's goal was to be able to take a lot of the challenges out there of all the handoffs between the ETL aspects of everything. And I think they've done a pretty good job to get started. Again, it's in preview. There's a whole bunch of stuff that needs to be done as they go forward. So with that, I'm going to flip it back over to Ben. We're going to talk about OneLake.
Sure, thanks. So OneLake, as we talked about Fabric, what is underlying Fabric? It's OneLake. So Microsoft OneLake is Microsoft's take on a data lake. We talked about a data lake before, how that is unstructured data in a giant pool, a lake. And that's what Microsoft has done with OneLake. So this is a technology they've got in place. You can aggregate data from multiple sources and pull it into your lake. You can use Microsoft Fabric, as Jim discussed a minute ago, and that's going to allow us to put some simple application of analytic tools to this data that we have in our lake. And the whole idea is to eliminate data silos, right? Instead of having, we've got some data here, we've got some data here, we've got some data here. Now we have to run analytics against all these different spots and try to figure out how well, no, we've got everything in a single spot for the entire organization. It's all in Microsoft OneLake. It's all together in one spot. Jim mentioned this before, but yeah, think of Microsoft OneLake as Microsoft OneDrive for data, right? It's out there. It's automatically provisioned with every Microsoft Fabric tenant. You're just going to get OneLake that way. And it is designed for collaboration. You can say the same thing about OneDrive. And it's designed for distributed ownership. So even though everything is in one place, in one lake, Microsoft OneLake, you can have distributed ownership. People can control different parts of that, the data that's going into there, who has access, how it looks, all of that. So this really is Microsoft's solution for harnessing your data in what we're in now, this new age of AI and cloud native analytics, Microsoft OneLake.
Thank you, Ben. So let's talk a little bit about Fabric. So initially we wanted to be able to toggle back and forth and show you the different Fabric aspects. But what we found as we played with it is a lot of the screens look the same and it wouldn't be as effective as just showing you kind of the big picture. So let's go through each of these different ones separately. So Ben talked about data warehouses. So within the Microsoft Fabric, they have the warehouse capabilities, so you can store your data. The data engineering aspect. Now, this is being able to look at the data as part of the ETL process that we talked about before. And this is setting up the infrastructure so that you can store the data, you've got it in the right place, you can be able to pull it and actually glean through the data. And then also what they have is Data Factory. So this is the transform aspect of everything. How do you make sure that you have the apples to apples comparison and you can tweak the data, you can get rid of data that you don't want to use, all through that capability. And then also Power BI. So Power BI is the rendering capability. It is the dashboards. It's the final end of that process where you can render that information up that people can make informed decisions based on that. Now, this is pretty much that lower tier that we talked about when we're talking about the descriptive as well as the diagnostic capability. What happened and why did it happen? As we go forward, you can get into more of the advanced types of capabilities with real-time analytics. So if you're in manufacturing, for example, or the healthcare industry with different areas within there, what you can do is actually pull the data up and get it off of like the Internet of Things, off of PLCs that are out there in the different aspects. So you can get real-time data and as it's happening right now. So Microsoft's got that capability, as well as when you get to the advanced skill sets. Now, this is when we're talking about the data science. This is the machine learning, the deep learning, working with the large language models. Fabric's got that capability built into it as well. So with that, that's just kind of a brief overview when we're looking at the maturity model of being able to go through the different steps. Again, you've got the data Ben's talked about with the structured, unstructured, and semi-structured data. You got the data warehouses, the data lakes, and then you've got the different tool sets that are out there from the ETL perspective to be able to do the extract, transform, and load. And so that's all basically where we're focused in on developing your own in-house artificial intelligence. We're going to switch gears here now, and we're going to look at the large language models. These are a lot of times developed by third parties. And within those third parties, what ends up happening is they've developed the language model for you. So, and again, this is going to be the ChatGPT, it's going to be the Copilot, it might be the Gemini, along those different lines. But, why would you want to use one? Well, it's relatively straightforward here. Depending upon the size of the organization you are, how many resources you have available, it's cost efficient. You can scale it, you can scale up, you can scale down. It's got the 24/7 availability. You can personalize this and it has the innovation potential. But there are risks that are associated with using third parties. You know, one of them is accuracy and reliability. And I'll give you a classic example here. You may not have heard of it, but they call it prompt injections. And so what can happen is it goes to the third party. Your prompt, the way that you write it, can be modified. Google kind of got called on the carpet on this one. And basically what they were doing is you would put in your prompt and then they would add an additional prompt to it, depending upon what the prompt was. So it would be tweaking your results based on their paradigm. So they did stop that, but that's one of the things that can happen as far as accuracy and reliability. You've heard about the hallucinations that go on within the large language model. There could be integration challenges. Obviously, your privacy concerns, whatever goes out there, you don't have any control over that information unless you've set it up. I mean, like with ChatGPT, you can have your own instance where everything's secure along those lines. Same thing with Copilot. They have the privacy aspect of everything. Depersonalization, that's kind of where a lot of the organizations that we've talked about start saying, well, you know, I want to be able to do this, this, and this for my organization. Well, that's typically when you start moving away from the large language model and start going through that AI maturity model to be able to build that out for yourself. And then also you have to manage the entire process as you go forward. So just briefly then looking at what we've done on a historical basis, we've talked about the prompt engineering. This is typically out of the box large language models that people can leverage today. This isn't the ability to have any of the customizations. So you can write documents, you can summarize meetings, you could do the research, you can brainstorm ideas, you can summarize stuff, and you can, you know, also create templates all along those lines. So that's pretty much the generic out of the box. What we're seeing now is that there's third parties developing different solutions. Now, as we've talked about before, it's one of these things where how quickly do you jump into the pool? Again, there's quite a few vendors that are out there. There's definitely going to be a shakeout. So do you invest early? And then you do run the risk of buying and then not being able to have that sustained on a go forward basis, or do you wait? And so with these third parties, I would be more inclined to suggest to you to keep a open eye for a lot of the things. You want to move, you want to get started, but you don't want to move too quick because they may not be around. But in either case, it could be customer support, content creation, personalized marketing from that thing, the analytics, as well as document processing. So these are some of the cases where here before, what we're looking at is this is stuff that you could do yourself with the large language model through the prompt engineering. We've talked about prompt engineering before. We'll be talking about it more as time goes. But here, these are going to be people creating a specific solution where they're going to be leveraging the large language models as well as the deep learning and all those things. You could purchase their capabilities from that vantage point. So with that, now what we're going to do is we're going to focus more on the large language models, the big ones that are out there today. I'm going to flip it back over to Ben. He's going to start us off, and then we'll show you some of the different ones that are out there. Ben.
Sure. Thanks, Jim. Yeah. So as Jim mentioned, so many different language models out there to be able to use. Many are tailored for individual purposes. They're coming and going all the time, but there are some kind of, big ships out there, right? So we're going to talk through a few of these large language models that are huge. They're out there. They're able to be used right now, and different purposes, different things you can do with them. As we look at this list, we've got things that can create images for you, things that are chat bots that you can talk with back and forth, things that are a little bit of everything. You've got Copilot out there, for example, and we're going to talk about that in more detail in a minute, but there's a Copilot for darn near every Microsoft product now. Anything they've got, they seem to want to put a Copilot on it. So there's Copilot for security, Copilot for Microsoft 365, Copilot, all of these things. We'll talk about that in a bit. But let's get into a few of these just to give you an idea of what's going on and what you might be able to use them for. Starting with ChatGPT. And here we go. So ChatGPT was kind of the first major success out there for AI chatbots. So this is something made by OpenAI, is the company that you've heard of. Lots of people have put a lot of money and time into that. Elon Musk was involved early on. He's now out. Other people have involved names that you know. This is also the technology that Microsoft licenses for use in their Copilot product. It's an advanced chat interface. You can go through and talk to it in just have a human-like conversation. If you haven't used it before, you can go and ask it questions. It can answer them. You can ask follow-up questions, and you can go back and forth. So it's not like a Google search where you just put in what you're looking for and it gives you what it thinks you want. This is you can really hone in on your what you're talking about. There are some potential issues in it. We've heard about those in the news. So with ChatGPT, there can be bias in responses. We've heard a lot about that, where these models are trained by humans, so sometimes human bias can enter into their model. Sometimes it gives incorrect answers. There are times where these models hallucinate. You might hear things about. I know there was a story a while ago about a lawyer who used ChatGPT to come up with some arguments in court, and it was referencing cases that were not real. So it can come up with things all on its own. So be careful, review what it gives you. And sometimes it can be overly wordy. ChatGPT can sit there and talk and talk and talk. Always constantly being improved, constantly being dialed in. OpenAI describes it as it's like having a virtual assistant, a trivia partner, and a friendly conversationalist all rolled into one accessible platform. They should pay me for that. But let's go and kind of show you how it works. So you can see here, we've got the URL on the screen for how to get there. And Jim, why don't you go ahead and show what it looks like to put in a prompt?
Okay, there you go. And Ben, what I can do is I can put the prompt right in here, but in either case, your history is going to be over here of all the different things that you've done. We've got it in chat 3.5. You can go into 4, you can pay for the chat GPT 4. That's where Ben was talking about. It's constantly being updated. 3.5 is a little bit further behind. In either case, it has a look and feel kind of like a Google. It was very simple along those lines. So what we decided to do is create a summary and say, write a summary of less than 100 words and cover artificial intelligence, narrow artificial intelligence, general artificial intelligence, as well as generative artificial intelligence. So plain and simple, hit the button. There comes your answer right up there, relatively quick. Sometimes a little bit slower. It depends upon the different aspects of everything. If you notice right here, it updated. So now it has my history of all the questions. I had done it earlier today just to make sure that we had the road test, to make sure everything was running. And then if we flip back over here, Ben, I'll get you back over there. And we go to the next slide. There's the answer that came up before. And the important thing is that between the answer that we have right here that they wrote and the one that we've got right here is every time you go through ChatGPT or any type of AI, your answer is never going to be identical. It's been designed to do that from that vantage point. So there's always going to be subtle changes and differences. Ben, what else would you like to share with us?
No, I think you've covered it. Yeah, these models, the way they create answers, and I think we've talked about this before, but it's word by word, right? So there is some variability in what these can produce. So it is literally just the model saying, all right, based on what I know, what I've been trained on, what the question was, what I've been queried on, what's the next logical word that would come out in my answer? And it is literally word by word by word by word. And it's just going, all right, what's the next word? What's the next logical word? And there's some variability in what they can do. So you will get different answers. If you were to flip back and forth, you'd see that the answers that it gave previously when Jim did the query and what we have on the screen are very similar, but different. So it's interesting. And some of these models, you can dial up the amount of creativity that you want it to have. How creative do you want it to be? How strict to its algorithm do you want it to be? So kind of just interesting ways to play with the results.
Yeah, good point, Ben. And that would be down here in the bottom left corner. If you look way in the bottom left corner, I'm not going to go through it all right now. We wouldn't have time, but here, right where my name is, you can get in there, get into the settings. And as Ben was indicating, you can tweak it as to, it gives you a range of how creative that you'd like to be able to be. And not Jasper, but the Bing aspect of it, which is Microsoft Copilot now, they've got that capability. We'll be showing that to you as well. Any additional thoughts or comments, Ben, before we move on?
I think we're ready for the next one.
Okay. So let's get to the next one, which is going to be Copilot. And so this is Microsoft, as Ben indicated, that OpenAI developed the software, and then Microsoft invested. I think it was close to $10 billion, if I recall correctly. And they got the access and the licensing to be able to get into it. So, but it's a little different version, and it operates a little bit differently than the way that other aspect of it goes. And right here, now your URL, if you have Microsoft Copilot, might look a little bit different. They've got it licensed, so your organization can set this up. And we'll go live right here, but we just wanted to make sure that you get the URLs. Again, we'll be sending out a PDF if you want to be able to get these different things so you can find the different aspects of everything. But let's go ahead and pop over to the Microsoft aspect of it right here. And the reason it says Bing Chat up there is that's because I put it together before we had everything before. So right here, if you look, it's got a work capability and it has a web capability. So in work is basically your organization can set up Copilot to reference your documents within your walls. Now you have to be careful when you set this up because of if you have compensation files that are out there, whatever might be highly private, depending upon who can be able to see it, you have to have a strategy in place when you're working on the work aspect of everything to make sure that you're not inadvertently sharing information with people that you do not want to share. But it also has the web capability. So you can go out to the web. Now, this is going to be leveraging more of the web rather than the work aspect of everything. And as Ben had pointed out to you before, as far as being able to do the different scale, you can be very precise, you can be balanced, or you can be creative. And basically with this large language model, and again, we're dealing with the generative AI, that is basically saying, this is kind of like that, the scaling. How, do you want to be really creative or do you want to be more precise from that vantage point? And then you can use the Chat GPT or you can use the turbo aspect of everything. Now, one thing that Ben brought it up before here, I put that back in there. I'll hit the enter key and Copilot will go out and it'll start creating the aspect of everything and how it all fits together. So here's the answer that Copilot's coming up with. It's a little bit different than what you're going to see with the format that came back from the Chat GPT that you had before. But the difference that when I was first introduced to Google and being able to Google something, it was keyword search, right? Now, really, as Ben indicated, this is more of a dialogue type of capability. So if you look at this and you say, if you look at it, and again, this is kind of getting into the prompt engineering, we can go there for a little bit. I think we got a couple minutes to be able to do it. You can dialogue with the computer. So the paradigm switched with natural language processing. We covered this a little bit in the first webinar as well. But with natural language processing now, you don't need to jump into the computer's mindset. The computer's coming and understanding us. And so the intent isn't just to put in a keyword. The more information you can give it, you don't want to give it too much information because then it can be it kind of, I won't say it loses its way, but if you give it too much information initially, it's not going to be as productive. So going back and forth. So let's say that I don't like this. I'll say, can you rate this for a college graduate? And if you hit the enter key, it's going to come back. It's going to take a minute. Oh, I didn't spell college right. Oh, well. Ben knows that about me anyways. We always got that going. So right there, see now it's coming back. And it's going to change everything up. And it's going to be a little bit different. You can say, can I do this for somebody with a 9th grade education? Can I do this for a 5-year-old? And back and forth. And then, for example, you could type in, and I won't, actually, I can talk it into it right here. That'd probably be less easier to say. Is there anything that I'm missing that I should consider that I haven't considered in talking about these different aspects? And you can click on that. So again, the intent with this natural language processing capability is to start having a dialogue. It's as we talked a little bit about the brainstorming and being able to do those different types of capabilities, that's what this is intended to be able to do. And that's the nice thing about the
When discussing AI, it's also important to consider the ethical and
there you go. Forgot that it does. I didn't turn that off. But in either case, you can see that you've got all the different aspects of it. Now I did hit stop, so it's not going to continue because otherwise it would have kept talking over us from that vantage point. So if we flip back over to our presentation and be able to do it, here is, and again, I'll go back to that one slide here in a second. Here's that road test that we did for the Copilot based on that similar prompt that we had right there. It came up with that general one. As you saw, we started having the dialogue with it and asking the different questions. Now, going backwards here, Bennett indicated that Microsoft has a lot of Copilots, and they do. If you look right here, I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but depending upon what tool you're leveraging from Microsoft, they've developed different Copilots to help enable you to be able to do them. For example, with the Fabric, I've seen been at live presentations and watched people basically talk into the computer or type into the computer and render entire dashboards without knowing the capability to be able to do it based on saying, here's what I want to do, here's what I want to see, here's how I'd like to be able to see it. You've got it from the 365 aspect. That's pretty much right here with the Microsoft 365. That's what we've been showing you right there. You've got it GitHub, Azure, all across the board to be able to get those different ones. And obviously they've got the Copilot from the aspect of Microsoft Word, Excel, and all those different capabilities. Ben, any additional thoughts or comments you'd like to share here?
You know, just a quick web housekeeping thing on the interface that we were showing earlier, that work and web tab. The work tab is part of the Microsoft Copilot, or the Copilot for Microsoft 365 license. So if you don't see that, that is an additional license that you would need. But no, I think you covered it pretty well.
Okay, so yeah, we got the different work in the web, and we haven't rolled out the work thing. As you can see right here, it's got all the different aspects that I had pulled up before. But okay, thank you, Ben. Okay, so with that, let's get back over here to our PowerPoint, and we know that we've got that. We've done the road test. So let's go ahead and do the Gemini aspect of it. Ben, take it away.
Sure, yeah. So Gemini, used to be known as Google Bard. So, you know, Google Bard is now gone. Long live Gemini. That's the new name. So here we are with Gemini. And what is Gemini? It's similar in some ways to what we looked at with ChatGPT and Copilot. So you can talk to it. Gemini is best described as a brainstorming buddy. That's how I like to look at it. So it can build on previous conversations and discussions. It's really good for complex dialogues where you're having a lot of back and forth with a lot of information. And Gemini 1.0 has been out for a while. 1.5 Pro was announced in February. It's now in public preview, I believe, just recently. And this version of Gemini is interesting because it's the world's first 1 million token context window. So if you've ever used the Copilots and the ChatGPTs, you can see they have a limit of how much they can take. I think with Copilots 2,000 or 4,000, depending in what you're in. With Gemini, 1 million. So that's 700,000 words you can dump into a prompt with this thing. You can pump into it video. You can put an hour of video into this. You can put, if you're a programmer, you can put 30,000 lines of code into this thing, and it can help you analyze it and come up with some answers. So it is very interesting and just a different take on it. Most people are very familiar with ChatGPT and Copilot because those are the ones that are out there. You know, they're in your face in Windows 11 with Copilot, for example. It's always right there. But Gemini is kind of an interesting tool, and we can show a little bit about that here next to Jim if you want to go ahead. Oh, and then here's the URL for Gemini as well. You can see that up there and how to get to it. Let's take a look.
We'll get you right over there.
And you still have Bard on your screen.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's because it's the old. They didn't change. I haven't updated the URL for it, so that's why they have Bard. I'll put that in there, Ben. I'll be quiet. I'll let you talk it through.
And here it goes. So as you can see, it's doing a similar thing to what ChatGPT and Copilot did. It's giving us an answer. Obviously, with this prompt, it's a little bit smaller, and we could dump a lot more in here. But just to kind of put out the point that if we give the same prompt to each system, we get different answers from each system, and how that's interesting. I mean, you can go through and try the different ones and see what works best for you. Gemini is just one of many tools.
Okay, thank you, Ben. We'll flip that back over and we'll show the presentation here real quick. And there you go. That's the road test we had that came. It should be very similar to what you saw there before. And let's switch gears here, Ben. Let's talk a little bit about Jasper. Jasper's been around. I believe it's close to $30 a month, and a lot of marketing teams have leveraged Jasper. So we've gone out and played with it, and I'll bring it up here real quick. There's the URL for Jasper, and let's flip over to it here real quick, and we'll bring it up straight up. And right along those lines, it's a little bit different. So in the ChatGPT, the Copilot, as well as Gemini, we could put it in and say, what is, tell us all about artificial intelligence and all that. So right here, this is Jasper. I'm already logged in. I've got everything all set. If I were to type in the exact same prompt, it's going to come back right now, and it's going to start asking me a ton of different questions before it writes anything. So it's a little bit different, and it doesn't necessarily have the content generation that you'd expect from the other ones. When I say expect, again, this is a different purpose for it, but it is leveraging the AI. So right here it says, what are the key points? So if I put in the summary again, and I say if I just get rid of this, and right there's the key points that I'd like to share. It's going to keep asking me questions before it ever starts to generate anything. So they're saying, what's the purpose? So I can say it's educational. Right? And then I hit the next, and it's going to keep asking me question after question, definitions. Now, in this case, Jasper's not necessarily going to come out and say artificial intelligence is this, general AI is this, narrow AI is that. So it'll be coming back and I'll say, can you provide examples? And can you put all this in all the different aspects? And so with that as the backdrop, I'm not going to spend too much time on it of going through all the different avenues that we had. But if we flip back over here, and eventually, after answering several different questions and going through the different iterations, it came up with what was very good content. Jasper's kind of written to do blog posts, social media, web information, all those different things. It's a nice tool. It's out there, but it's got a little bit of a different purpose from that vantage point. So that's going to be a little bit different. So we've talked a little bit about the ChatGPT, which started it all, the Copilot, the Gemini. We've covered Jasper relatively quickly. We've got a couple more, and we also need to manage our time here so we can get to some Q&A. So Ben, I'm going to let you go ahead and talk about DALL-E.
Sure. So now we've talked up until now about back and forth, chat engines and how that works. Well, DALL-E is a little bit different, right? So DALL-E, now we're getting into image generation engines. So this is developed by OpenAI, the same people who brought us ChatGPT, and it's actually part of a ChatGPT license if you're going to go that route. You can get it that way. Now, this program, we're not going to necessarily demo. It takes a little while to create the images sometimes. But what we'll talk about is as you put in a prompt, this model is trained on a data set of image and text pairs. So, if someone says this, it's going to look like this. So it's very good at generating images. So as you go in, a prompt that we used here was create a photorealistic photo of a professional woman that could be used on LinkedIn. And there's what you get. And if you're in a cartoon world, this is a great LinkedIn photo. It's not super photorealistic, but it did what we asked, right? It's a professional woman. I guess if you wanted to use this on LinkedIn, you could.
So Ben, if I can jump in here really quick, see, this is the beauty of what we're talking about with the natural language processing, because once you get this result, you can say, okay, based on this, I'd like you to do this now. And you can keep having that dialogue and keep tweaking the picture until you get it tuned the way you want. We just stuck with this one for purposes along those lines. So again, it all goes back to that prompt and then the dialogue that you're having. I'll turn it back over to you, Ben.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So, I mean, you could say, I'd like to see her in a red blazer. And there you go. It would change it for you. So it's a good way to make images. I used this for the first time quite a while ago. I had a presentation I was doing at a conference, and I had a very specific image I needed. Searched and searched and searched, and finally I was like, I'm just going to ask it to create me one. And it did a good job. It made exactly what I needed. So useful tool, especially for presentations when you're used to spending hours looking for an image. Well, just have it make you what you need. But let's look at the other one. There's another image generation tool out there, and that's Midjourney. So Midjourney is similar but different to DALL-E. So same idea, you're going to put in a prompt and you're going to get an image, but look what we did here. So same prompt, create a photorealistic photo of a professional woman that could be used on LinkedIn, but look at how much more like a human this looks. I mean, it's just a different engine. So, there are some differences, obviously, between the two platforms. I mentioned that DALL-E is included in a ChatGPT Plus subscription. You can get $20 a month, and you can get them both. Midjourney plans are separate. I think they start at $10 a month for a basic plan and go up from there. And, DALL-E is kind of considered the easier to use model. However, Midjourney, it offers powerful features. If you're familiar with the system, that can really give you like a step up. They can give you a little bit more advanced. I mean, just for example, the photo that we have here. So different use cases, different things you can do. Both good ways to create images, both very interesting uses of AI.
Okay, thank you, Ben. So we're kind of heading towards the tail end here. So, if you think about what we've done today is we've done a review of the previous two webinars that we looked at before. We've talked about the data structure, making sure that you focus on data. And I know we keep beating that drum, but it's really important. You got to have the data in place and make sure that you've got it all set. And then we talked about the structured, we have semi-structured, and then unstructured data. We talked about the data lakes, the data warehouses, and getting everything all put into place. Then we talked about the AI maturity model and looked at it and said, okay, depending upon where you are within your journey, how can you get to the different steps and what are the different tools that would be there? Again, we bifurcated that to say, hey, if you really want to do something kind of custom, or if you want to leverage the generative AI, you can do both separately, or you can both do them concurrently. With that AI maturity model, that's when you're going to be getting into stuff like the Microsoft Fabric, the Talon, you can use Tableau, Qlik, all those different tools. They all have varying degrees and capabilities. Then also we've now spent some time on the large language models and looked at those and kind of gave you, now there's over 30 that are out there. So we obviously can't cover 30. So we thought, let's cover and focus in on the ones that have a lot of the momentum going today. Doesn't necessarily mean that they'll be here tomorrow, but it all goes back to simple terms. Is really general AI is like that Swiss Army knife. You have the algorithm that's capable of doing many things. Narrow AI is going to be very focused, and generative AI is going to help you do the brainstorming and all those different capabilities. McKinsey said that that's a consulting firm that 50% of the tasks that you're doing today can be handled by the generative AI. So that's going to be where a lot of different organizations have been able to look. As we looked at all these different capabilities. These tools are out here today. You can start leveraging them tomorrow and jump into that world of AI through the prompt engineering. We'll be following up with a whole bunch of prompt engineering ideas. If you want more information, by all means, reach out to us from that vantage point. So at this juncture, what we'd like to do is do some Q&As. And Rena, if I can turn it over to you, if we have some questions, Ben and I would be happy to try to answer them. And we're going to shut this down promptly at 11 o'clock a.m. Rena.
Absolutely. Just as a reminder, if you do have questions, please put it into that Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We're going to start off with Dan's question. Dan wants to know, are there any model policies for employee usage of AI and address feeding company or agency data into AI for analysis?
So is the question then, are there templates that are out there? The answer is in webinar 1, we covered, as well as webinar 2, we covered a lot about the AI policies and the importance for having them. And so the answer is there's a lot of information that is out there and available. We'd be happy to follow up with you, Dan, on that specifically. My recommendation would be is just don't take something off the web and slap it in there, because every organization is going to have subtle nuances. And there's probably 30 or 40 different items that you'd want to take into consideration as you're developing an AI policy. Hopefully we've got that answered for Dan from that vantage point. Rena?
There's another one that talks a little bit about images. One of the questions that I wanted to ask is, if there are images that look similar to real people, are there any policies or things that people need to consider when reviewing images that they're using for their organization?
I mean, yes, these images that are created can look like people. The question you're specifically referencing, they asked about Myra Murati, who's the CEO of OpenAI. Basically, the image that DALL-E spit out, I had never noticed, but thanks for pointing it out. It looks strikingly like their CEO. So the professional woman they put up there does look a lot like their CEO. That's interesting. But as far as are there ramifications for using an image that looks like someone else? I mean, I guess I don't have a great answer. It's just going to depend on how much it looks like it. And yeah, be careful, right? But most of the time when you're using an image, the recommendation that we've had within Raymond is that we'll always, reference it, say this image was created by DALL-E, or this image was created by Midjourney. We'll try not to just throw something out there as if it's our own. I don't know, Jim, if you have any more input on that.
Yeah, I do have a couple thoughts. The federal government came out with a couple months ago the synthetic ruling, and basically we need to watermark everything that is synthetically generated. So things that are coming out of DALL-E and Midjourney and all those different aspects, you want to do that. But that goes back to the first question too with the policy. that's what you want to spell out to your associates. What is appropriate to be used? When do you acknowledge that you're using something along those lines? And we know how litigious the world is these days. So that's going to be a case-by-case scenario within an organization using the judgment to be able to say, do we want to go there or do we want to be more conservative from that vantage point? Great question to bring up to kind of spark that thought pattern of saying, what should I be using? And that's another aspect of it is, and we've covered this before, the training, making sure that the team members are trained, they understand what their roles and responsibilities are. So thank you for that question. Rena?
All right, so we have a couple additional questions that came in. So where is the best early traction likely for a corporate accounting and finance department interested in exploring AI potential?
Ben, you want to handle that or would you like me to handle it?
Go ahead on that one. I'll take the next one.
Okay. So this is where I'm saying, when do you join in and when do you hold off to be able to do those types of things? So having been in the software industry for close to 40 years now, my how time flies. I've got a lot of connections. I've talked to a lot of different people from that vantage point. For example, Microsoft, as Ben was alluding to, they're incorporating Copilot into everything. So their apps, the ERP, which is the enterprise resource planning types of apps, from a finance perspective and along those lines, they're going to be building that. And then we also talked about that in the second webinar about a lot of the large software houses are building them. So I recently had a conversation with a friend regarding Sage software, and they've got a huge team that are out there building all these different capabilities into it. So the answer is that if you're looking for a third party, they're on their way and they're developing the capabilities of leveraging AI into their existing package that they've got. Now, on the other aspect of it, from a finance team, this is why we've talked about the AI maturity model and incorporating the different aspects of everything into it, because you've got on-prem data that you've got here today that you can then, depending upon where you are in that maturity model, be able to do the descriptive and diagnostic. And it's not that hard to jump into the pool. When you get further up the ladder, when you start talking about the deep learning and the machine learning, that's a whole different game. It's a whole different skill set. It can be very expensive to be able to get started from that vantage point. So my recommendation is, and the other thing is too, and we talked about this before in some of our other seminars, is large language models are not great at math. Now they can develop what they call APIs to call out and do the different math aspects of everything, but I'd be careful with leveraging that. So my recommendation would be is play with the Gen AI and kind of do some of those tasks, and then start your journey from the analytics capability and leveraging one of those ETL packages to be able to get there, running them up at the dashboards, and start getting ready for the advanced thing. I think we're close to 10:59 at this point. So if we didn't get your question, I know Rena will cover this, we'll definitely follow up with you. Ben, it was great working with you today. Thank you for the time. Rena and Christina, thank you for pulling everything together. At this point, I'll turn it back over to Rena.
All right. Well, if like Jim said, if we did not get to your question, we will be following up with you and make sure that your questions are answered. Thank you all for joining us on our final session here today, the 3-part series of Thriving with AI. On this journey, there's 3 areas that we've talked about. We've talked about how we can boost productivity, build your AI strategy, and to sum it up, find the right tools for your organization. So thank you, Jim and Ben, for presenting today and for providing us with valuable information, and to all the presenters along the series who have participated and provided some insight. And thanks to all of you who have joined us on this journey through this 3-part series. A couple of things that I want to go back to as far as some housekeeping. Is this a recording that you will receive? Yes. So if you have that question, please look in your email within the next 24 hours. We will be sending a follow-up email that will have the recording as well as access to today's presentation. And as a reminder, the past 2 webinars that we have had, the presentations were not available, but we are providing access to this presentation for this 3rd and final piece. So look out in your email. It will also have access to the past recordings of the past webinars that we've had in this series. So be on the lookout for that. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to our team. We are here to answer your questions and to walk alongside you on this AI journey. So once again, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it, and we hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week.